Guess I'm the one you've been talking about.
Unpopular, calling out class down, cast simple truth.
Hey guys, Dozer here bringing you a deck tech video. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but I'm very excited now that Rosetta is out and that I've had some time to actually look at the cards, read what they do, and do some deck building to share with you what I think is a very exciting and very just clean deck list that has a lot of room for innovation and growth yet to achieve. Growth is the key word here because obviously that's one of Verdance's best card, which is rampant growth. However, I think you guys will be very excited and hopefully pleased to see where I've gone with this list. And I want to walk you through my thought process on how I arrived at this deck. So let's get right into the video and look at the deck list. So right off the bat, we're going to notice that obviously we're playing Verdance. If you're not familiar, she's an Earth Wizard hero who can, when she heals, while having enough Earth cards in her Banish Zone, she can deal an Arcane damage every time she heals. That's not really why we're playing her. We're really playing her because she's an Earth Wizard and she can play Earth cards and Wizard cards in her deck. For her chest piece, we're going to wear the Fyendal Spring Tunic in most cases. This is a card which lets you slowly generate extra resource points over the course of the game, which can be used almost at any time depending on how many counters you have on the card, to help you get over those little breakpoints of pain effects, which can have very large payoffs. We're also going to be running Metacarpus Nodes. Metacarpus Nodes is a decent card. It gives you a little bit of extra reach with your resources to threaten on hit effects such as Surge effects, which are arcane on hit effects, where you do your arcane damage, and when you hit with enough damage over the threshold, you get to do a bonus effect. And it also serves as arcane barrier, so it's a defensive piece against magic arcane damage as well. Plume of Evergrowth is an extremely good card in Verdance. It allows you to trade a blue card or 3 resources, however you manage to get those, for a Earth card in your graveyard, which is either an action or an instant. There are not Earth block cards except for the new one out of the dual decks, which isn't even that, and that card isn't even that great. So this basically can pull any Earth card out of the game from your graveyard into your hand, which is very important because it means you get to play it immediately, or use it for pitch or block or whatever you need. So it's a very flexible card, and it's kind of like the Halo Illumination in Prism. That's how flexible it is. It does not block, but it doesn't need to. It's really powerful. We're also going to be running Storm Striders. This is a key card in this build of the deck because we are relying on our ability as a wizard to attack our opponent on their turn with instant speed and arcane damage to finish them off. It also has Arcane Barrier 2, so it's also a defensive piece against arcane damage classes and helps you combat things like Amp in the first place. And you can use it on either player's turn, the Storm Strider's effect. So you can use it as a Mage Master Boots if you need to, or you can use it to extend your turns and finish someone off. It doesn't have to be on your opponent's turn. It just allows you to play on your opponent's turn. And another key part of this deck is Surgent Aethertide. Shock to nobody, this is a powerful card when you can increase the amount of damage it does, because for every damage this card does, with arcane damage, it will give that much damage to the next card you play that deals arcane damage. So that means if Surgent Aethertide does 1 damage, the next spell you play does 1 additional damage for every effect of arcane that it does. So that's important because there are cards that do multiple instances of arcane damage, where Surgent Aethertide buffs both halves, whereas the keyword Amp only buffs the next instance of arcane damage. So we'll go over that a bit at the end of the video, but that's something that's important to note. So you'll see right off the bat, yes, we are playing 9 Counter Blessings because that is a powerful way to gain life, which is a very easy way for us to have a efficient kill turn on our opponent by healing a lot and then using our rampant growths to multiply that value into offensive value to finish off our opponent. So Counter Blessings, whether you love it or hate it, it's in the game, and it is a useful card for Verdance because she scales with how much you're healing, and it is very hard to beat the rate of a late game Counter Blessings, where even if you've only got 6 copies in the graveyard, the red one here is going to heal you for 9 on its own, which puts you into a danger zone very quickly for Amp effects. Because we are trying to abuse Amp effects in this deck a lot and multiply the Amp even further. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to have, obviously, Counter Blessings as a core part of this deck to get enough Amp going that we can then carry that Amp over to kill our opponent, even at instant speed. What's important about that is we're going to use Aether Flare. This is a card that I have not seen very many people running, and I don't understand why. This card's amazing. It allows you to, for 1 resource, attack for 3 Arcane, and if it hits your opponent, you get to buff your next spell by that much Arcane. So the red Aether Flare is basically a, if I hit amp 3, which is crazy. It doesn't quite amp because it doesn't work on your staff, but your staff works on Aether Flare, which then works on other spells. So with very little setup, Aether Flare can help you just really multiply the damage on your turns, and then it doesn't really matter if you're using the red or not, because the blue does a damage. And so if you buff this by 10 to 20, it's still going to give that much damage to your next cards. And so I think Aether Flare is a standout, wonderful card that I'm shocked no one else is running or seeming to run, especially because it'll combo with other cards. So for instance, Aether Flare combos well with Forked Lightning. So Forked Lightning is one of those arcane damage cards which does 2 sources of arcane. So if you were going to buff the damage of Forked Lightning with Surgent Aether Tide or Aether Flare, Forked Lightning will carry over that buff onto both halves. So let's say my Aether Flare hit for 5 damage, my Forked Lightning would deal 2 plus 5 and then 2 plus 5 again. So it would deal double of the buff and do 14 damage total, which is pretty good. Pretty good on the Forked Lightning there. So Forked Lightning, also all of your wizard spells block 3, so you block very well in this deck, aside from the Counter Blessings cards themselves. So you have a lot of ways to combat on hits and slow your opponent down. Not necessarily with Disruption, but you can block decently well. And Forked Lightning is really only played on your own turn. Amp does not work well with this card because it'll only apply to the first of the hits. So let's say you amp for 20, it's only going to deal 22 and then 2. It's not going to deal 22 and then 22. It's going to deal... Amp only works on the first source of Arcane, whereas a card like Aether Flare specifically says the next card you play with an effect that deals arcane damage deals that much damage plus X, right? And so if it has an effect, encompasses every effect on the card. So if a card has multiple arcane sources, those are all effects of that card, and so they will all deal the arcane. It's kind of the logic there. So those are some really key pieces to the deck. We're also running Felling of the Crown. This is an Earth action attack, which you can block 3 with. It has Decompose, which lets you banish Earth cards from your graveyard to help turn on your hero power. But what's key about it is that once you have 4 more Earth cards in your banish zone, Felling of the Crown is a 3-cost 8 power attack that also forces your opponent to put a card from their hand on the bottom of their deck before they get to block. And yes, you have to do it yourself, but you just set up your hand so they don't have to do that, and it's totally fine. Felling of the Crown is a fantastic card, and it's worth noting that its effect text of having +4 power is not live while you are blocking, it's only while it's attacking. So this is not also a Phantasm Popper that has 8 power. It only is 4 power until it is attacking. Furthermore, we have Pulsing Aether and on the left and then Life on the other half. It's a 1-for-4 Arcane, that's the same rate as Scalding Rain, but if you pay an additional 1 resource, you can use Life or vice versa. And Life will gain you 1 life. You can play the Life half as an instant. You do not have to play both halves. So if it's your opponent's turn, you could activate Life for a resource. You would not also be able to play Pulsing Aether as an instant. It's worth noting, but the card blocks 3 and is a very useful card at not only filling your graveyard with Earth cards, it gives you additional sources of arcane damage off of your Plume of Evergrowth, because you can fish this out of your graveyard and then use it to have an outlet for damage, like when you're doing all these buffs. So it's very useful at doing that. Beyond that, we have Rootbound Carapace. It's another good Decompose card. There's not that many of them, but Rootbound Carapace is a 3-block Decompose, and when it does so, it gets +1, so it's a defense react. It's an Earth card. It ticks a lot of boxes. It's good. Sigil of Solace is a good card. It doesn't help you block, but it does enable you to have these mini combo turns where you might have 1 Rampant Growth, 1 Sigil of Solace, a blue card, maybe a Snapback and an Aether Flare, because you just happen to draw those cards or pitch stack them or something. And then just off of that, on your opponent's turn with Storm Striders, if they're low enough, you can heal 3 off of Sigil, Rampant to go up to 4 healing, amp 4. Then you can Storm Striders your Aether Flare for the 4 plus the 3, potentially, so it's 7, and then you can do a Snapback off of that for an additional 10. So you're looking at least like 17 threat damage off of just a very simple hand with almost no setup. You can do like items and stuff too. So like, let's say you didn't have a blue card, you could have an Energy Potion or a Tunic counter, to help get you over the hump there. And so Sigil of Solace just enables very, very powerful in-game scenarios or just chip damage, so it's just very useful. Beyond that, the other core all-star of the deck is Snapback. I don't know why people aren't running Aether Flare Snapback with Verdance. To me, it's a no-brainer. You literally have a card that is able to be played as an instant that does arcane damage, blocks 3, and all you have to do is play another action card that's a wizard card, which a lot of your cards are, and Aether Flare definitely is. And so if you are trying to get the most mileage out of your amp possible, no matter what amount of amping you're doing, if you're trying to amp, Aether Flare is one of the best targets, especially in the Snapback, because you just get to double dip so many times, especially off of your Surgent Aether Tide. And on top of that, Surgent Aether Tide only costs 2 to activate. So off of a blue card and Tunic resource, you can Surgent, you can then Aether Flare into Snapback off of what? That's a 3-card play with your Tunic. So if you have a 4th card, which is your Sigil, and you have a Rampant growth, then you can, again, just really go to town and just do a lot of damage out of nowhere. So yeah, Snapback, insane card. It also gives you the ability to kill your opponent on their turn with your combo. So the big weakness that I've seen in a lot of Verdance decks, and I'll get to the rest of the deck list in a second, but just a keynote here. A lot of Verdance decks are trying to run Energy Potion, or not Energy Potion, Healing Potion. And Healing Potion does not work very well for what Verdance is trying to do. I know it sounds weird, but you have to make it to your own turn to use your health potions to heal 2/2/2 at best case, and then you still have to use your whole hand to kill your opponent. And if you're only healing 6 off of 3 cards that you invested, that's not amazing. That's not amazing for enabling rampant growth. Because at that point, you would have been better off probably playing 3 energy potions and pitch stacking 2 red sigils of Solace. Like, that's about, yeah. Anyway, I think that about says it all. Energy potion is just way better than health potion, so I just want to make that clear here. And why I'm not running health potion, it's because you do not have to wait for your opponent to let you have your own turn to kill your opponent with this. With energy potion, you can use it on your opponent's turn. It'll enable your Storm Striders to play your Aether Flare, and then you use your Aether Flare to land your Snapback, and so you're still double dipping your amp, just like you would be with Surgent Aether Tide, but you are able to then still retain your own personal turn plays where you can Surgent Aether Tide into Aether Flare into Snapback, which is insane, or Aether Tide into Forked Lightning, or Aether Tide, Aether Flare, Storm Striders, Forked Lightning, whatever the case is. But you are able to, again, kill your opponent on their turn with Storm Striders, whereas if you're running a health potion Verdance and you don't have any other ways to use your rampant growth, so you're really having to play 3 dead cards that don't do anything until you can take the full brunt of your opponent's attack to use all of your cards to kill your opponent. In a slow matchup, maybe that works, but I'm not convinced, and I would rather attack my opponent when they have an empty hand while they're attacking me than when they have a full hand and set up and give them time to disrupt me. I would rather kill them in response to their stuff. And Verdance like this does that very well. So let's finish off the deck list. It's pretty simple. We're running all the good Earth cards. So that's Felon of the Crown, like we said, Rampant Growth here. This is really the key card of the deck. I'll talk about this in a second. Sorry, I kind of assumed you knew what this card did. I'll get to it in a second. But Rootbound Carapace, Plow Under. Plow Under is basically like a type of Command and Conquer effect where it attacks the opponent's arsenal by getting rid of the cards there unconditionally, in the sense that it doesn't have to hit, conditionally in the sense that it has to decompose. But once you have 4 more Earth cards in your banish zone, it attacks for 6, does not block for 6 power, it only attacks for 6. So you have to, again, not have a Phantasm Popper here. It does not pop Phantasm. Please do not try to pop Phantasm with this card. It does not work that way. And the reason is because attack action cards effects are not active unless it specifically says they are while they're blocking. Anyway, so Decompose, you banish 2 cards as 2 Earth cards as a cost from your graveyard, as well as an action card. So you can banish Rootbound Carapace to fulfill this condition on the Earth half of the condition, and you can bottom your opponent's cards out of Arsenal. Plow Under is a great target to Arsenal because you can play a Plow Under from Arsenal, and then, oh look, I have no card in my Arsenal. It heavily negates the downside of having to have these symmetric effects. Same with Felling. So just be on the lookout for that. But again, good card. We're going to talk about Rampant Growth last. Autumn's Touch, blue, Earth Block, Earth card that blocks 3. There are not many of those. Autumn's Touch is very good for that reason. It's just a good all-around role filler. It does what it needs to do. Destructive Aether Tide. This is another type of Command and Conquer effect. It attacks the arsenal. It's a 0 cost, 3 block blue wizard spell action, effectively. It deals 1 arcane damage to any target, and it has Surge. So if it deals damage to a hero, you destroy a card in the arsenal. Destructive Aether Tide is very powerful. It's not often that you will get to play it for value, but it can be very threatening. And so if you have the ability to even pump it off of a Aether Flare into a Stormstrider's play to get it going, or if you have Destructive Aether Tide off of a Metacarpus node's activation, you can force cards out of your opponent's hand to keep their arsenal there. And so you are effectively, if they have a good card in their arsenal that they want to keep, you can turn your Metacarpus nodes into a reaction that gives a damage for resource and forces your opponent to discard a card. So it's pretty good. Destructive Aether Tide, very useful card. Another crucial card for this deck, and for Verdance, I think in general, is Energy Potion. Verdance likes to build up resources. She likes to set up a game plan, and she likes to execute it. Energy Potion allows you to effectively bank intellect for future turns. And you can use it on your opponent's turn or your own. Energy Potion's honestly insane, and the fact that you can just block with your whole hand, drop an Energy Potion, go on about your day, and then eventually you have 2 blues on board of resources, plus tunics, so you have 7 resources on board, is insane. You enable so many crazy plays off of that, and I can explain that more in future videos, but right now we're just doing deck tech. Energy Potion's insane. With just 1 Energy Potion, by the way. Remember, this gives you 2 resources, and what else costs 2 resources? That's right, count your blessings. So you can Energy Potion on your opponent's turn, count your blessings from your own hand, Rampant Growth for 1 plus whatever your count your blessings healed for. Let's say on average, your count your blessings in the late game will heal for 8 or 9. Let's just say 9 for easy math. Count your blessings, heal 9, Rampant Growth, heal 1, amp 10. Boom, you've used 2 cards and 1 Energy Potion on board to amp 10. And now you can use 1 blue out of your hand to play your Aether Flare off of your Stormstriders and then snap back, and you're gonna deal like 13 Arcane into another 13 Arcane because they're gonna AB 3 the first half, and you're not gonna be able to do the full thing. And sometimes you'll play a blue Aether Flare or a blue snapback or whatever, the damage is variable, but the point is, that's really easy. That's really not a lot of setup at all. The maximum is so much higher. If you just have a if you have 2 Energy Potions and your Tunic resource, that's effectively another blue. That's another copy of Rampant that you can play and still Aether Flare Snapback. And that's not to mention, if you even get to your own turn, it gets insane because you can, like I said, you can Surging Aether Tide into Aether Flare into Snapback or whatever other spell, because you don't even have to use Snapback. If you have your Stormstriders at the end on your own turn, you can use your staff into Aether Flare into any spell. It doesn't have to be Snapback. Snapback just lets you do it without using Stormstriders. But if you want to kill your opponent on their turn, you do have to use Stormstriders. So keep that in mind. And so, again, I'm getting sidetracked. Heartbeat of Candlehold with Earth Wizard action. It's a blue card that blocks 3 and it's an Earth. And its text isn't that important, but healing 3 life when your hero power is active will also deal 3 Arcane. That doesn't really matter. This deck's going to normally overkill your opponent, but the fact that it has Go Again could be useful in some cases. And again, it's an Earth card, so if you need to trade a blue card in your hand to get a block out of graveyard, you can do it with this. You can also use this to get an extra action point off of Stormstriders on your own turn, and other things like that. So Heartbeat of Candlehold, interesting card, not particularly amazing, not particularly good, not particularly a build around, and the fact that there are not more cards that have sequential healing like this makes Verdance's hero power not super great to build around and constructed, so that's kind of why I have the minimum Earth cards to turn it on. Whereas, and really we only care about getting up to the 4 cards in the Banish Zone. We only need 4 cards to turn on our Felling of the Crown and Plow Under, so we don't even really care about getting up to 8, although you do it eventually if you need to, you can. The other 2 cards left in the main deck are going to be Pop the Bubble Blue, which is a zap, right? It's a wizard action that deals 1 Arcane, blocks 3, pitches blue, costs 0, and it has a surge effect that destroys an aura if you hit the hero. So there's no restriction on what type of aura. So if your opponent has an Arclight Sentinel and you hit them with the Surge effect, you just killed their Arclight with a blue card that dealt 1 damage. That's insanely good. Obviously, you'd have to do more than 1 damage if it had Surge. But the point is that Pop the Bubble Blue, very good resource card, very good vessel to carry your buffs on, and also has good text against decks that are normally difficult for wizards, which is illusionists. And it can also do well against things like Channel Millennium Tree, or you know, Rune Blades with their rune chants and their rune chant generating auras and things like that. So Pop the Bubble, very, very, very good. Hugely good card. Scour, similarly, it's another blue card from Wizards, which blocks 3 and destroys auras. You do have to pay into it, but if your opponent is playing Enigma, Scour is your best friend because you turn their Spectral Shields into dead cards. You literally just say, nope, you played the Spectral Shield on the board. Cool, I'm going to turn that into 1 damage and get rid of it before the damage hits you. So let's say they have 5 Spectral Shields, you pitch 5 into Scour, you destroy all 5 Spectral Shields, and you deal 5 Arcane. So you're effectively dealing 10 Arcane because you're getting rid of their ward and you're still hitting them. Scour is very, very good. It also can kill multiple 0-cost auras at the same time. So if they have things like Haze Bending, Shimmers of Silver, or Restless Coalescence, you can also kill those. Notably, you cannot get rid of Miragai, Genesis, and cards like that, but that's why you have Pop the Bubble, and there are some other cards that Verdance can run, which I'll talk about, that can help answer Miragai specifically, but, and by that extension, 10,000 Year Reunion, but we need to talk about Rampant Growth for a second. This card makes the deck work. This card is all Verdance. This card is literally, this is kind of like the Herald of Erudition that Prism had when she was released in Monarch, where it's a class talent locked card to the hero, but it's not a specialization, and it's definitely like her best card. When you compare it to Heartbeat of Candlehold, this card blows it out of the water. And just like how Prism's specialization was Herald of Judgment, Herald of Erudition is way better. And Rampant Growth in Life is the same thing here, where Rampant Growth Life is, I mean, it has the letter X on it, and generally that's really powerful. So what does it do? It's a yellow instant card on both halves, which costs 0, and it amps X, where X is the total life you've gained this turn, and the first half of it, life, is 1. You heal 1 life. So how does this work? Because it's an instant on both halves, you can play it as an instant at any time, and because it costs 0, both halves cost 0. So you can always play this card for 0 resources, activating both halves of the ability. And the way that split cards, meld cards work is the right half will resolve before the left half. So they resolve as separate layers on the chain. So if I play Rampant Growth / Life, I declare both sides. Life will heal me 1, and then Rampant Growth will happen. That is always the order that it will happen. So what you can do if you have multiple copies of this is you can play Rampant Growth, heal 1 off life, play another Rampant Growth, heal 1 off that one's life, play another Rampant Growth, heal off that one's life, and then resolve down the chain to Rampant, 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 where you amp, 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 based on how much you've healed. So that's incredibly powerful on its own. You can get this out of your graveyard with your Plume of Evergrowth. It pitches yellow, so you can pitch it with your staff to the bottom of your deck to help you pitch stack it. It costs 0 on both halves, so it's extremely efficient. And yes, it's kind of like your Aether Wildfire / your Blazing Ether, or your Frost Hex from Icelander. Wizards generally have a win con that's their way to multiply damage, and Rampant Growth is that for Verdance. And so your quest, as they like to say in the LSS headquarters, is how do you enable yourself to gain enough life while you have the Rampant Growth to then play spells that kill your opponent. And that's what this deck's trying to do, right? So just to recap, we are heavily basing the deck around Rampant Growth's ability to amp us for a lot of damage. Ideally, we want to use this on our Surgeon Aethertide to carry over that buff to the next card. However, we also have cards in our main deck which carry over the buff, like Aether Flare, which we can then combo into other cards such as Snapback or Forked Lightning, or any of our other zap cards like Pop the Bubble and Destructive Aethertide to help us blow up our opponents from effectively full HP. And if we do damage to them over time, we can inevitably cut them off short by using Storm Striders to kill them on their turn with like a 10 plus damage range. I mean, you have a very, very, very high range of kill with these types of effects. The other thing that's important to note about this deck is that it is main decking Counter Blessings. There are things that counter these strategies, right? There's a lot of tech cards that hate this. So Amulet of or Talisman of Cremation, Amulet of Echoes, Poison the Well, Grave Keeping, even something like Aetherize or Rewind. There are a lot of cards, not to mention things that break items like Arg Smash or Smash in Good Time or any number of other cards that do those similar effects. Especially heroes that can like strip your hand and make it difficult for you to set up your deck, like Arachne or New, or banishing cards out of your deck all the time. That can be very difficult to set up a late game play. But the point of the matter is that Counter Blessings with Verdance allows you to very quickly save up value while staying alive longer to burn your opponent down where they stand if they ever go shields down against you. And the only thing you really have to watch out for are all these different tech cards, but not every deck can run every tech card, and Counter Blessings may not end up being the best way to do this. Like, it might not be necessary, but I do think that it's very, very powerful when it does work. And if you play around their ability to use instants on you, there might be a world where you run sideboard cards like Aetherize yourself so you can counter their Poison Well. Also, you have to remember that if you play Counter Blessings, if they don't do anything when it goes to resolve, you get the heal. And if they try to play their Poison the Well in response, you can use your Rampant Growth to heal 1 off of life. And like, you can let their Poison Well resolve before your Blessings resolves. You play Rampant Growth / life, choosing life. The life will damage you by 1 instead of healing you, but then your Counter Blessings will still heal you for like 10 or whatever. And you'll still amp. So, well, no, I guess you won't amp off that Rampant Growth, but you can at least respond that way. You can also respond that way with like your Sigil of Solace or your Pulsing Aether Life, but I think even if you had to sacrifice one of your Rampants to being able to keep your Counter Blessings alive against the Poison Well, I think that's pretty worth, because you can still amp off the other one and do big damage. So, so yeah, this deck's really fun. You set up a combo kill. If you are allowed to. If you are not allowed to, you still have the ability to chip your opponent down and then murder them on their turn with Storm Striders, Aether Flare, Snapback, and you just have a lot of really good cards in your deck. A lot of 3 blocks, a lot of blue cards. I think one change that I would eventually make to this deck potentially is turning red Snapback into yellow. Because Snapback is always the last spell that you play, and because you're always trying to buff it, the base damage doesn't really matter. You're mainly playing it for the ability to play itself as an instant. So yellow Snapback might actually be better for pitch stacking purposes and just general resource things. But I don't think many people have played yellow Snapback in history, so it wasn't the first one on my mind, but the red and the blues are definitely good, and I think the yellow Snapback is probably better than the red if you had cut one of them. I do think red Aether Flare is really good. I think blue Aether Flare is totally great as well. I don't think I'd run the yellows though. I think that's just too many copies. But yeah, that's the deck. I just wanted to get the video out there so that you guys could play around with it and see what you thought about the main 60. The sideboard here is completely up to you. I thought some of these cards would be useful. Alluvian Constellus, I think, is mandatory to have as a wizard. The ability to have an AB1 on your chest that banks resources is insane, because it effectively acts as an energy potion that you get for free to activate your staff. And if you're playing against a deck like Viserai or Vincent or Aurora or other wizards, it gives you more AB to cover things like Amp, as well as banking resources on the board to just cheat out amazingly powerful turns. So Alluvian Constellus, very, 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 very powerful core, I think, in Wizard. I think Barkskin is also really good. It's a very good card at blocking a lot, especially because of how many non-attack actions are in this deck. I think once you get it activated by decomposing twice, it is just very good defensive value, and it's worth considering, although I don't think it's mandatory. Goliath Gauntlet, Amulet of Echoes, Summer's Fall, Weakest Link, and Erase Space are, again, completely audibles. I'm not really worried about my sideboard so much. I think there's a lot of room to experiment. I think the reason that I chose these cards specifically, Summer's Fall is a decomposed card, it's an Earth, it's a Phantasm Popper, but most importantly, it unconditionally sends Mirror Guide to the bottom of their deck, as well as 10,000 Year Reunion. So if your opponent is having the one really big aura on the board, or Genesis, or whatever it is, you attack their face or an ally, and then you can activate the, it does not say it attacks a hero, it just says attacks. So you can just Summer's Fall away really problematic cards, and then still attack for 6. That's a really powerful card. Summer's Fall is great. I wish it blocked 3, but it'd be probably too good if it did. For a rare anyway. They'd make that if it was a Majestic, not a rare. So Summer's Fall is great. You might need to run more than 3 copies to have a game into Enigma. I'm not sure, but you can't win them all. Erase Face is a very disruptive card into Lightning Heroes, Earth Heroes, and Mechanologist Heroes. So that's why this is here. It doesn't block well, but you're trying to throw it at your opponent to slow them down enough that you can kind of get back in the game. Goliath Gauntlet is here to supplement that effect, as well as for Weakest Link, because Erase Face, attacks for 6, that's a 2-card block or some armor in a card. And in a lot of cases, you do not want your aggro opponent to just throw 1 card in front of it and then run you over. You really want to make them respect what you're doing. So I think Goliath Gauntlet can come in very clutch for that. Weakest Link is also good. Weakest Link is a 3-block 6-power card, so it's a good card. And if it hits your opponent and they choose a card without block value, so like an instant card or just a non-block, you can discard it and you draw a card. So you force them to discard and then you draw a card. This is very scary against Lightning Heroes. It's very scary against Brute sometimes. It's very scary against Mystic Heroes who have a lot of instants. And it's good against people who have a lot of items, like Dash IO. So these are some heroes that are really up on the come up here. I think Weakest Link is definitely one of the best cards for handling that. Again, Goliath Gauntlet just helps you push that breakpoint. I think so Amulet of Echoes is in my sideboard right now just because it's a blue card. It has Go Again. Definitely don't need 3 copies, but it has value against the Lightning Heroes like Aurora and Acilio, as well as Dash IO, who plays like a couple copies of cards in the same turn. Like maybe it's 2 0-60s, maybe it's 2 T-Bones, or whatever they're running. 2 Cerebellum Processors. Amulet of Echoes lets you slow them down and trade positively on cards when they do extend too far. If they play around it, you're still getting an implied value off of this because they are not taking a line of damage that they would have been able to take otherwise. So you are still providing a speed bump to them, ideally. It's also good against Verdance because Verdance will normally try to double Rampant Growth you. And so if you have Amulet of Echoes and they try to double Rampant and then try to do something like Surge into Aethertide after, because they maybe tried to do the Health Potion combo, which is inferior to this one, in my opinion. Amulet of Echoes would let you interrupt that pretty well. So it's important to note that I'm not running Health Potions. And here's my quick soapbox about Health Potions. For those who don't know what Health Potions do, Healing Potion, it's a 0-cost blue item, action card, generic, says action, destroy this, gain 2 life, go again. So it's an action speed, heal 2, blue card. The problem with that is that you have to get to your own turn in order to activate this to get any value out of it at all as an item. That's not good, because if you are going into the late game to try and end the game with a powerful combo, you need to be able to keep cards in your hand to actually combo and kill your opponent. If you had a 1-card combo, it'd be fine. If Rampant Growth drew you cards based on how much you've healed this turn, okay, we'd be talking. But it doesn't. Healing Potion is very capped on the value it can offer you because it only really synergizes with Rampant Growth, which sure, you can try and pump your Rampant Growth up from the bottom with your potions, or you can use your Energy Potion to play cards which buff your Rampant Growth even more than the Healing Potions would have. So, especially because if you're running Healing Potions, you kind of have to run 3, and you need to kind of play 3 into a slow deck to win the game. Whereas with Energy Potion, you really only need to play 1 or 2 of these, and then you're absolutely set for the rest of the game. And when you have a third one, I mean, it's great, it's awesome, but it unlocks tremendous amounts of plays for you off of your equipment because Storm Striders is such a powerful card. But Healing Potion doesn't work well with Storm Striders. It doesn't work amazingly even with Rampant Growth because it's a low value heal. You have to use cards that do nothing until the turn you win. So it effectively doesn't even heal you because you're not even using the healing, except maybe to be like, oh, well, I guess I blocked for 2 in the past, right? Because when you heal before you go to your combo, right? So like on a turn where you're not going to combo and you heal, you are wasting the heal. Right? You are lowering the value of your eventual combo, and you are saying, hey, I was happy with this blue card giving me 2 life, instead of blocking 3 or doing something more useful. So Healing Potion, I think, is a tremendous trap for Verdance. I think you should not play this card. I think Energy Potion is infinitely better as a use of your action, as well as the limited number of no blocks that you can put in your deck and still have a functioning deck. I think Energy Potion enables some disgusting plays off of your Counter Blessings or your Aether Flares, anything like that. Please, please, please play Energy Potion over Health Potion. I think it's way better. We'll see how it ends up over time, but I think that I just think it's a no-brainer. So thank you very much for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed the video. This version of the list will not be changing on the link here. I will be updating new versions of the list on my Discord. It's not exclusive or anything to Patreon or some stuff like that. It's just available, so it should be in the video description, so check that out if you want to talk about Flesh and Blood, talk about deck lists, and share your results and share your thoughts. Otherwise, I always love reading the comments, and I would be curious to know what you guys think of this deck list. I have not gotten to play it very much yet, but in the first game I played with it online, I did 25 off of my Aether Tide into Aether Flare into a Snapback off of like a 3 red hand because I had time to put 3 energy potions down in the mirror. So it does what it says it does on the tin. Aether Flare's insane, Snapback's insane. If people try to say otherwise, tell them Dozer says Aether Flare and Snapback is awesome with Verdance, and we'll see what happens. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys. Leave some comments and let me know what you're thinking about the deck, the hero, the set, Flesh and Blood, the bans, anything you want to do. I'm going to be out of town for a while, so I will hope to see you guys soon, and otherwise, take care.